Hello, and welcome to the next section of QuickBooks in the Real World. This is Marie Gibson with Gibson and Associates, and I'm delighted that you're joining me to learn how to get your QuickBooks to sing and dance. We're focusing it on credit cards in the software and how do we actually pay bills with credit cards? How do we reconcile a credit card statement? How do we be careful that when we have multiple credit cards and money's going back and forth between them and the bank, right? And we will be using our desktop version and our online version. So I know that several of you said you like the switching back and forth. We use the desktop version to kind of get our bearings. It's very visual. It's the software that you see up here. So it has a lot of icons, it has a lot of drop-down menus, and it works in the way that we're traditionally used to seeing software work. In addition to that, I of course have our sample company in our QuickBooks Online. I have several browsers open so that we can actually see that it works very similar in both software programs. So in the sessions previously, we learned how to enter bills and pay bills using the checking account. We learned how to write checks. We learned how to get money into and out of the check register, just like our normal writing checks, spending money, getting it into the bank, getting it out of the bank in more of a generic fashion. We learned that bills land on accounts payable list. This is a list of all the bills that I would owe. In this case, this is Larry's sample company that I'm using to demonstrate. I also learned that I can use the invoicing process, and those clients, those customers, land on my accounts receivable aging summary. And so when I'm here, I have my enter bills and my paying bills. I have my creating of the invoices, receiving of the payments, and then ultimately putting that money in the bank. Very similar, I could use a one-step process, which is creating the sales receipt, and the money goes into this area. We learned that that's called undeposited funds, and you heard how much I love undeposited funds, and it will become your best friend if you allow it. Okay, and so what happens is undeposited funds hangs out here, and then in QuickBooks, we want to reflect the exact manner that that went into our checking account. So some of you would receive 10 or 12 or more checks every single day. You wouldn't want those to jump from here automatically into your bank account, because then you would have a whole string of deposits that don't match what your bank statement says, right? So we use that undeposited funds to actually group them together exactly as they're going into the bank. We also learned about our profit and loss report, and you can see that I've enlarged the font. You can customize these reports with the button in the upper left-hand corner. And again, we're very visual learners, and we're looking for tabs, tabs, and tabs. And I just bumped the font on here to make it a little easier for you to read. We learned that a profit and loss is for a period of time, like a week or a month or a year. Similarly, or should I say, another report that we learned about was our balance sheet. And the balance sheet is on a very similar, or on a very specific date. So we have on this date, I have this much in assets. So my company owns these assets. I have these liabilities, and I have this owner's equity. Okay? So we learned about the balance sheet, and we learned how important it was. Our chart of accounts is the hub. It's the traffic cop of all of our transactions. So money coming in, money going out, it's routed through the chart of accounts. It's saying, please organize me in this manner, because we learned that in a profit and loss, we have income, we have costs, which are direct costs, and then we have expenses, our overhead and operating expenses. And we learned that on the balance sheet, we have those assets, liabilities, and equity. Those are 5 major types in your chart of accounts. So now when we start talking about our registers and our credit card registers, if I have a statement and I'd like to enter credit card charges, there's a button right here. I can click on this and I enter the credit card charges into whichever credit card I'm using. If I have more than one, I need to be careful. And I would enter these. These look very similar to bills, don't they? I can say this was at Home Depot, was $500, and it was for job supplies. And now you heard me already talk about the fact that I think that Larry has a few too many job breakouts here, especially if you're going to Home Depot. You don't always track for these 4 or 5 different sub accounts. I would actually create this a little bit differently, but this is a sample company and we're learning how to analyze how exactly we'd like our records to be set up. Also, when you post on job materials, you need to be careful. You could see that when I hit job expenses, materials, I also had this job materials. This is an income account, and the other one was my expense account. So be careful the way you set up the names of your chart of accounts, that you might make a little bit of a distinction so that when you're in a hurry, they post to the proper income or expense. In this case, this is obviously an expense. I can save a new, and this is 90 days in the past. Now let's go back and change that date. I actually wanted it on whatever date. Let's see, we're looking at December 31st, 2025. So somehow that got changed a little bit. Let's change that date. So because we want those to show on our reports, right? We like to see, when we're learning, we like to see the reports. So that should be a pretty good date. And then save a new, and then let's say Pizza Hut. And we go and we treat our employees for a staff meeting, Pizza Hut. And then maybe we have Office Depot. Oops, I think I spelled it wrong. We'll quick at it and we'll show you how to go back and correct. And yes, it is, it's vendor. It may not seem like a vendor or supplier, but people that we pay in QuickBooks for the most part are vendors. And let's say we had $500 there, but 100 of it was office supplies. And then maybe we had a new printer, okay? And some of you are learning where the split is, that gray area of whether it's actually asset. We're going to record this as an asset. Doesn't necessarily need to be. New printer, Christmas printer. Right. That's just to distinguish it from other printers in the past. And in this case, this was $100 and this was $400. Okay. And that discussion about whether something's an asset or an expense, we will cover in the future. But for now, we just popped it in there as a new asset. You could see how I added that on the fly. And then let's say that I went to this company and I rented a piece of equipment, $333. And let's say that that happened to be for Adams. And we learned before that when I then go to invoice Adams, that bill is going to show up. Save and close, thank you very much. When I have my MasterCard, it looks, this is the register for the MasterCard, and it looks just like the register for the checking account. If I switch over to Craig's Landscaping, again, I'm in the online company now. You can see that I have the accounts receivable aging summary that we talked about earlier. I brought up some of our similar reports. Our balance sheet, we saw our credit card here is 157, and then our profit and loss for the year. So if we were going to use the credit card account, let me duplicate. So it's right click, duplicate. Darn, I might have hibernated it just a bit too long. I hate when that happens. We'll just use what we have now and see if we can, yeah, okay. So I will need to pull up I'll need to close these and see if I can't refresh that sample company. It just needs to give me a few more minutes. Let's see if I can grab it, and it says no. So test it's a sample company everybody can use, Test Drive QuickBooks Online. And we have to scroll through and it says QBO, Intuit, Test Drive. There we go. So it's not hard to get it back. It's just kind of, I had my reports hanging out there ready for you to look at. So it make this little demonstration easier, right? We like that. And so here, I wanted to take you into banking was one of my windows, and thank you. And I have these little 3 lines. I can actually open my my monitor a little bit bigger for you to see. Here's my MasterCard, and this MasterCard also looks just the same as the bank accounts. There's not much visually different, is there? So it standardizes our mind. And in this case, they call it a bank register. We're going to the register of the checking account company. And then when we're here, I can see that it also looks like a register. It has my charges. Let me make that just a little bit smaller. I think I got it bumped it a little bit too large. There we go. And so you can see that these are the charges. And then ultimately there's the payment for Larry. I'm going to close the message that it continues to give us. And the balance that I have currently is $157.72. If I wanted to add credit card expense, you can see here that I can add expense, and we can do the same thing. Home Depot, I have to add it on the fly because of course this company doesn't save any of our sample demonstrations. Job expenses, job materials, it's a sub account, and I'm going to save that. And then let's say Home Depot, and we're going to have office supplies, office Depot. Get my depots correct. Love those big box stores sometimes. Love the little ones too. This one, let's say we were going to be $800, and we're going to split, right? Because we want to say, okay, I want this to be office supplies. And it's like, where's the darn split? Where's the split? Well, let's go in, and we saved it, and let's edit that. And when I edit it, it'll pop open, and we'll just sit here and add that second printer, that extra backup printer. And of course we have to add it. It's not an expense. It's actually a fixed asset, and it's an equipment. We'll probably put it under copiers, printers, extra backup printer. Thank you. And then our office expenses were 100, and this printer was 700. That makes it a little bit more like an asset, right? Now, some people have $1,000 limit, some 2,500. It's a rule of thumb that you need to create a policy that you would have in your own company for that. Personally, I like to record all of those larger expenses as assets, and then we look at how they affect and help our bottom line, right? Because that's going to be carried over a number of years towards earning that profit. So there's something about cost accountants that like those things in assets, because you then attribute that to the earning power of the company. Okay. So here I'm going to go back to this location where I have my column, because I'm also able to add expenses from here. And so if I have an expense and it was say like Pizza Hut, and it's a new vendor, and I know it doesn't seem like a vendor, but for QuickBooks purposes, we want those as vendors. And the QuickBooks Online, again, calls them categories. They're accounts, staff, meetings, then it's expense, and it's probably just a miscellaneous other business expense called staff meetings. And it's $86.17. It's not for a particular customer, right? Unless you're working late on somebody's big project, and we would save and close. And then at some point in time, we receive that statement and we need to reconcile. And when we go to reconcile, a credit card account, it's going to look very similar to reconciling a bank account. And so when we're here, it says, again, a lot of messages. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to reconcile. Our beginning balance was here. Our ending balance would come off of the bank, off of the statement that you receive, correct? And then let's say 11/05/2020. Credit card dates are always a little bit different, aren't they? And so what we'd like to see when we go in here, and be sure to read the messages as you work through this on your own the first time, is we had a beginning balance of 0, and then at some point in time we had a lot of charges. And so I can say there's little radio buttons right here. I can select all of them, or I can select none of them, or I can select, say, yes, that's on my statement, on my statement, on my statement, on my statement. And what we're trying to do is when we receive that credit card statement and we're looking at it, we want that credit card statement to look identical to our QuickBooks file. That's what reconciling is everything that's been charged on my statement and my payments that I've received should match what's going on over here. They should be the matching game. When we were 3 years old, we flipped up the little, let's see if those matched and those matched and those matched. We want to play the matching game. We want to reconcile. That's all reconciling is making sure that what QuickBooks says is the same as what my credit card statement says. Or if I'm reconciling the bank statement, the same difference. What my bank says is the same. Sometimes there's mistakes in my QuickBooks. Sometimes there's mistakes at the bank. And yes, banks do make mistakes or have some inexcusable activities that need to be challenged on occasion. I saved a client over $20,000. They had cashed a check twice. Once back in December of last year and once it was June or July of this year. So it's kind of exciting because I was like, this check's been run through twice and the bank had run it through inadvertently twice. So we were able to recollect all of that money. I paid more for my annual fees and then some. Okay. So when we're looking here, we can see that we have a difference. What we're trying to do is actually find that we have a 0 amount. Well, let's say there's some charges on here I just forgot to add. Oh, well, let's see. I had some equipment rental. Let's see. Equipment rental. And it was for equipment rental for 5 days. No, it was actually for longer than that. And it was $600. Save and close there. Oh, no, what was my date? I better edit this information, right? My dates, let's go back here. I'm just pulling all of my dates in by doing this so that I can see everything. That's a little, you can see everything that's here. I want to edit this date because we had said, back in November. So I got the wrong date on that. You can see how easy it is, right? And so now, if I have this, let's edit that information. And my statement is going to go back to November. I think we had said the 5th. And I still didn't capture it. And let's see. You can see that I'm playing with the dates. Sometimes that really helps. You can say, well, there's the charge. And we still don't have a $33.91 charge on that. Well, lo and behold, a lot of people forget to add their finance charge. And so in this case, we would have, we'll watch that date again, November 4th, and it's a bank service fee, $33.91. So many times people have said, I can't reconcile. And I'll go in and I'll save the date I'll save the day because they don't have their finance charge added. Now you can see that even though I have several unselected things, these are in the future. These belong to the next month's statement. So I can edit this information and you can literally go in, let me pop back here and this was on November 8th. Occasionally, I have found that even though my statement date is spot on, that the way that the bank clears it, whether it's a weekend, that sometimes I need to bump that by a few days going forward in the future. So now I have zero difference. This MasterCard is spot on. I've reconciled it. I have the option to pay all or a portion of the bill now, or I can enter a bill to pay later. Well, let's go ahead and let's see what happens if I want to pay now. There's a check. Let's say that it's going to be an EFT, right? Because a lot of times we just got online and we pay it, and I don't want to pay 1,000. Let's say I only want to pay 500. I just pop in there and change that 500, save and close. Thank you so much. Now let's look. I'm going to right-click duplicate. I'm going to grab a report, and the one I want to see is the balance sheet, right? Because on this date, if I go down here, my credit card balance will have accumulated a bit. So let me widen this for you so that you can see. I'm actually going to click this little button up here. I'm going to make sure it's on compact. I don't particularly need the number here. I may not need the description right now. I'm trying to make a little extra room so you can see what I'm including and not including, and then it'll take a minute to adjust. And so this is all of my credit card. And you can see that this is the current balance. It started from, at this point in time, 9/8, these expenses. And here's the amount. There's the balances. One thing I was troubleshooting the other day that came in real helpful is using this little button. You can see that there are two, not the one way up there on the top, but this little guy right here for each individual report. And I actually added my debits and credits, and I don't teach business owners debits and credits, as you know, but it was very helpful to me visually because I could see here were the payments and here was another payment. So they stick out a little bit easier than this, just the little small minus. I've been using readers, and some of those numbers get a little bit tiny, and I do a lot of work every day on the computer with numbers. So just adding these separate columns really helped. And it just is a way to troubleshoot when you're looking for something. So I'm pleased with that report. I'm pleased with the reconciliation of that. And I would actually then step back into the desktop version. There's my MasterCard. And let's say that we wanted to banking. I wanted to reconcile this credit card, and I want to reconcile it. Let's say we actually added some things to that. Let's say December, we'll just pick a wonky date, and my ending balance. As you know, I'm just randomly making up these numbers off of pretending that I have a bank statement. You can see that I have a payment here. And if you're watching this, you can see that the bottom right-hand corner changes as I'm clearing these particular items. Now, let's say that I'm done. This is not on the statement, and this is not on the statement. Neither of these two showed up on the statement, but I have a difference of $75.59. I can't figure out what it is. It's nothing that I know. It's late, I'm tired, and I'm like, okay, just reconcile. Well, that's not possible. It says, hello, you don't get to reconcile. There's a discrepancy. So you can leave this and go rest and take a break and come back later. You can return right now and go hunt for it some more, or you can enter an adjustment. And so I just entered an adjustment. How easy was that? Well, I'll show you where that lands and whether you really want that in your reports or not. It also has the same option of whether we write a check for the payment now, enter a bill for later, or we'll just leave the balance alone. We're like, okay, I'll pay it later, but I know I need to pay it later, so we'll just let the balance lay, and it lays in that balance sheet account. I can print or display the reports just like in the online version. And so here, when I come to the balance sheet, I can see that my credit card has increased now to $4,200, a little bit over that. And then I'm looking for where the adjustment lands. The adjustment lands, let me show you where it lands the first time you use this account. The first time you use it, adjustments likes to be in your face. So if I had never used a reconciliation discrepancy before, and I used this file in one of my teaching of my classes, so it had already been used for reconciliations. So this reconciliation discrepancies shows up right at the very top of your expenses. It's like, hello, with the blinking red lights, right? Rudolph. And so we can see, I really don't care for that. I should be paying attention to what's going on. Maybe I'll go back and see what I can find. Meanwhile, I don't want it up there at the very top. And so I'll drag and drop. You can see I'm just using the little diamond on the left-hand side, far left. Sometimes you have to take a little running start to get it down there, right? My mouse is, there we go. And so when that report's refreshed, I have automatic refresh on my reports, the reconciliation discrepancies shows up at the bottom. Now, people ask me all the time, and when I had 9 employees, they'd always say, can I just do an adjustment? I've spent so many hours on adjustments. Well, we had to measure whether it was worth it to a client to actually adjust something we couldn't really find. So I usually suggested that if you go through it twice, and then you have somebody else take a set of eyes for you. Sometimes I have clients have trouble reconciling, and I can pop in, and a second set of eyes that's refreshed and not so used to working with the same exact numbers can pick up the difference in a heartbeat. Right? So sometimes you just need that second set of eyes to take another peek. But I usually say if it's under $5, it's really not worth the effort in going back over and over again. And I'll have people argue with me, and that's fine. So those of you who say, I reconcile to many every month, that's great. I prefer to do that. It's just not always feasible for me. So there will on occasion be some little discrepancies. And on occasion, it's a time lag that actually will then show up the following month, and those discrepancies zero out. I work with a franchise, and their third-party sales actually feeds directly into their QuickBooks in the journal entry format. And when we reconcile, oftentimes 1 month will be a little short, and 1 month will be a little bit over. And at the end of the year, we kind of have balanced out that. And it's just without digging into every single penny, which costs a fortune every month, we allow that little bit of difference to run. It's just QuickBooks in the real world, right? What is acceptable to you when you're running your company? Okay? And if you're a nonprofit organization, you do need to be a little bit more careful about that, because you'll be answering to some auditors or reviewers on a regular basis. So again, we were able to reconcile our credit cards, enter credit cards. Now, I will tell you that people ask me, they'll say, my credit card statement is 100 pages long. Well, no, actually, I've never had anybody say 100 pages long, but 5 or 6 pages, right? Some of our credit card statements get so long. So what I suggest, excuse me, what I suggest when you end up so some of my clients will ask me about credit card statements that are 100 pages long. And no, they don't actually have those that are 100 pages long, but they have extensive statements and how to enter those. And if those need to be entered one by one by one by one by one, and I suggest that you do something a little bit different, is you might have meals and add up your total meals. Larry didn't have meals in here, so we needed to quick add it on the fly. And let's say his meals were $118. His travel was pretty slim this month, right? I've been doing a lot of traveling. How about fuel? Fuel, not so much, but there was some for local deliveries, and the gardening, he's a gardening guy, so there's some fuel. let's say that we had some office supplies, and we're adding these up on the statement. So we're taking our statement and we're actually adding them up and saying, you know what, this was my total amount. And here was, and a second new Christmas printer. I couldn't just get one. I had to go back and get another one, a little bit more expensive. So now I have 2 Christmas printers. So I'd probably change the title of that fixed asset, wouldn't I? And be a little bit more descriptive. And then let's say we had some equipment rental. Yep, and I want to make sure you saw that I grabbed it and put it to income. I actually want it to be equipment rental. Let me use my typing ability there. Equipment rental expense. There we are, 230, and computers. And I was thinking about computers in the sense of repairs. There we go. And that was $318.43. Yeah. So you can see that this number, this 3601, is the same as my statement, 3601.43. There's my entire statement. It's boiled down into my categories or my accounts. And I find that a very acceptable way of entering credit cards into QuickBooks. Now, with that said, some of you will like to enter those line by line by line by line, and you will do it through a banking feed, through banking integration. And banking integration works phenomenally. It's a great tool in both of the companies. Let me go back over here real quick before we hibernate this little software. And so as you can see, I'll make my screen a little bit wider, and I might make this browser a tad bit smaller right now. There we go. So when I've hooked up my checking account, my savings account, my MasterCard account, the integration comes directly from the bank. And some of these are a good solid match to something I've already entered into QuickBooks. So I've already entered this into QuickBooks, this $18.97. I match that. Norton Lumber, this happened to be a credit card bill payment. I match it. You can see if it's a nice solid match of something that's already in there. It's kind of like the game we talked about. Let's match those. The one thing I don't care for with QuickBooks Online, I'd like to see different, is this uncategorized expense, uncategorized asset, uncategorized income. And so many people will just say, oh, yep, it's an uncategorized expense. And they'll add it. They'll just do this quick add. No, that really needs to be categorized. You need to tell me, is this from Amazon? Is it for small tools? Is it for equipment? Is it for office supplies? Was it for the owner? So much of Amazon now is for the owner, and you need to be real careful about including those in your books, right? That's not a business expense. Now, if it is a business expense, you can obviously take it. But if it's just Christmas presents, then no. So we'd say that was small tools. And when it's changed to small tools, then I can add this. So I would have several pages, obviously, of what's coming in on a daily basis from my credit card. And I could add, or I could match. So here again, you can see that this credit card expense was a match on the 24th. This one happens to be the match, it looks like, for the 17th. So do be careful of your dates. And oftentimes this bank detail right here will help so much with you determining what that is for. So I love the banking integration in the QuickBooks Online. I love the banking integration on QuickBooks Desktop. They do work visually just a little bit different. You can see here that in this case, this is my checking account. And this happens to be uncategorized income. I would never just bring that in to my QuickBooks file. I would want to actually have a sales receipt or an invoice for if it was for Books by Bessie, and we don't really know unless this banking detail gives me some indication that it is, okay. But there should still be some sort of sales receipt for her. If you're shortcutting that process entirely, I have seen some clients actually go ahead and just say this is for design income. And so they don't have a sales receipt or an invoice in there. They're just posting to that particular account or that particular income account. And then a rental, this happens to be equipment rental. And you obviously, this was a little refund here. So when we're at this location, equipment rental, and thank you, I'll add that. And equipment rental, you can see how it changed by itself. We'll add that. And then it asks me, is this a rental always going to be equipment rental? Yeah, pretty much, isn't it? And so I would say yes. And in this case, you can auto add, like automatically add it each time it pops in, or you can leave it waiting in the queue and you can help it. You can use the add when it's hanging out there. As you become more comfortable, more familiar, you will auto add. And so that rule will now put everything in, every expense that you make into equipment rental. This happens to be on the wrong side of the debit credit conversation, right? And I don't talk debits and credits, but we've received $200. This is obviously a refund or something that reimbursement refund. And so it is posting towards income, it's being received, but we still want it posted against equipment rental. Don't create like a miscellaneous income account for that. That's just a refund of something that you've paid for. Okay, so you can go down through these queues and either add or match as is appropriate for your company. Just be careful that you don't get heavy-handed with the add. If you're heavy-handed with the add, oftentimes you're adding something that's already in there and it just didn't come up as an automatic match. So in this case, you can actually ask the program to help you find a match, and that you'll go through the whole queue of what you have that might be available. And sometimes I've been able to find those quite easily. They just didn't automatically match. And in this case, we're going to leave that as it is. So you can see that my banking integration works well for checking and for credit cards. I particularly like it for credit cards. And when I'm in desktop, here's my view. It's a little bit different view, but it works the same. Here's my checking, here's my savings, and then I would have a third one out here for the MasterCard. In this case, I have 7 transactions that are pending review. You can see that there's 3 that, that it automatically recognized, which is really cool. I have a tab here. Again, watch where our tabs are. This is partially recognized. These are unrecognized and I need to help it out a little bit, or these are the ones that I just added to the register yesterday. And so I might have a queue. So banking integration works so well overall. And people are a little bit worried about it. It doesn't just dump, as you can see, here's my checking register. It doesn't just dump all of my bank transactions into the register. That's always everybody's fear. Oh, so I don't want those dumped into my register. No, that's not what it's asking to do. What it does is it brings them into a holding area. It brings them into a cubby hole. It brings them in and it holds them in this queue. And as it holds them in this queue, it's waiting for you to actually then go and add to the register as these are, okay? The same in the QuickBooks Online version, held in the queue. They're not in my register yet. They will be once I either match them or I add them. If there's something in here that I don't want, let's say that this, I just couldn't find it, I didn't match it, I didn't want to add it, and I just want to, in the big scheme of things, excuse me. There we go. I actually just want to come in here and I want to exclude it. And when I exclude, it hangs out in this column over here. You can see this is a tab. And I was like, I don't want to bring that in. It's not matching. I already have it. I can't figure out a way to get it to go away. Well, it went away. It's no longer in the queue for review. It's excluded. At some point in time, I may need it back again. I undo it, and it's right back where it was in exactly the same condition that it was. And you still have to wrestle with it. So this was our session on using credit cards to pay a lot of our expenses. We like those points. And then how do we reconcile? How do we reconcile our MasterCard and our Visa credit card, any of our credit card statements, right? How do we take those statements and make sure that the items that are charged and the payments match exactly what's in QuickBooks? I look at them and I say, yep, 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 yep. And at the end of the day, they look great and I reconcile and I'm happy with life. Those hit my P&L statement, they hit my balance sheet statement, and it keeps all of my reports current and up to date. Likewise, in my checking account, when I ask to reconcile it, it works in exactly the same way. Reconcile, and when we reconcile, I need an ending balance. And when I start reconciling, you see that I have the little radio buttons. So they've done a nice job making them visually the same, right? And in the desktop version again, same, but different, right? When we're here and we ask to reconcile, I'm actually not going to I'm going to reconcile our checking account. Thank you. Our ending balance, continue. And here's my payment, and here are all those items that have cleared my statement. And I would work through this list, right? And again, I want 0 at the bottom. So thank you very much. Appreciate your attention during this session. Please email, text, or join our Facebook group, Profit Made Simple for Business Owners, and ask me any questions that you would like. I look forward to talking with you then.